But embraces stands for emotions, meditation, breathing, redirect, attitude of gratitude, caring, exercise, EFT tapping, and sleep. That's embraces. And we do it over 6 weeks. Emotions, meditation, and breathing are our first big three. Then we have redirect, attitude of gratitude, and caring in one. Then we have EFT tapping and sleep, making up our six. These are fairly simple tools. The issue for a lot of people is that we don't practice them. And when we practice them often, they're really, really reliable. But for a lot of us, we try to do our breathing without having practiced it. We try to do our breathing when we're in a panic attack, and it's too late. You need to be doing it all the time so that when we get into an anxious state, our reticulative activating system, which is a little organ at the back of our brain that reminds us how to do things and scans for things for us, reminds us. It'll kind of pops up like a little voice going, should you not be breathing right now? But if you're not practicing it all the time, it doesn't do that because it doesn't know that this is the link to helping you to calm down. So the first thing I would say is with all of these tools, with any of these tools, whichever one you decide you like the most, practice, 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 practice. I do mine every single day. I do my breathing every morning and night. I do my meditation every morning and night. I pray and do my gratitude during my prayer every morning and every night. And that helps to keep me. Doesn't mean emotions don't happen. It doesn't mean I don't get stressed. It doesn't mean because this is life and life happens and things happen and we get upset, etc., etc. But it means I can cope with it far better because I have these tools in my back pocket and I can pull up whichever one I need in any given situation because I have practiced them. So the first tool we're going to look at, I have called emotions, and it's all about stress awareness and how stress feels in the body. And it's this, very much this idea for me is that you are not broken. You are having a biological reaction to a stressor. And when we really grasp that, we can understand that actually I can take control of this. I can't change the situation necessarily, but I can change how I react to the situation and I can remain calm and centered or come back to a place of calm and centeredness very, very quickly, more quickly than I used to be able to. So it doesn't stop the stressors happening, but it allows you to go, oh, I'm reacting as if, and I need to breathe, tap, whatever is the appropriate tool in that situation. So if you have a pen and a piece of paper handy, and if not, don't worry about it. But if you do, what I would like you to do, and if you're listening to this on the recording, you can pause me now and you can go and get a pen and a piece of paper. But what I'd like you to do is draw just things that make you happy, moments of joy. I don't mean a big thing. I don't mean it's usually the little things and it is usually moments. So it's that sunset or that rainy day when you were sat reading your book or the feeling of sand in your toes or how dancing makes you feel. Just draw representations. And this isn't, thankfully, because this one's recorded, you're not going to have to show it to anybody, but it's not about your drawing skills. And I'm just going to pull you mine out to prove to you it's about drawing skills because I can't draw to save my life. This is mine from when I first went into training in 2020, February 2020. And that's my dogs and a representation of my local park. And what looks like the Ukraine flag is actually meant to be the beach and the sea. And the little person that looks like a star is actually me dancing, and there's musical notes. And I've kept that since then. And I don't need to refer to it anymore because I'm going to do an exercise with you. That means you won't have to refer to it. But I keep it handy so people can see I actually went through this process myself to get to the stage where I can remain centered and calm in most situations. So if you draw, just take a couple of minutes to draw. Again, if you're listening to this on the recording, just pause me Take a couple of minutes to draw representations of the things that bring you joy. When you're done, press play again. And now what I want you to do is put your hands on that drawing and either adopt a soft gaze, which means pick a point on the drawing to stare at until your eyesight goes a little bit hazy, or I invite you to close your eyes with me. And we start with 3 deep cleansing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Don't stretch it, don't push it, don't make it uncomfortable. Just 3 comfortable long breaths for you. In through the nose and out through the mouth. I want you to bring to mind all the things that you've drawn on your sheet. Those people and places, the pets, the sunshine, the flowers, possibly your church, your spirituality, that special sunset or sunrise. Bring them all to mind. And if they've made them onto your page, when we're talking about happiness, joy, and contentment, they should already be at a 7 or an 8 by the very fact that they've made it onto your page. Just allow yourself to notice where in your body do you feel that joy, happiness, or contentment? And what does it feel like? And when I say that, I mean sensation. Is it large or small, near or far, warm or cool? Does it have a colour or a sound? Is it spiky or smooth? Does it have a tingle or is it sharp? Light or dark? Dull or bright? Light or heavy? Think of the sensation words, because sometimes those are much easier than naming the emotion. Because is it joy or is it ecstasy? It's very hard. They're very close, some of the emotions. So just notice the sensations and where that sensation lands in your body when you think of those things. Now, there'll be one thing on that page that scores higher than the others. I want you to concentrate on that one thing. It might be a person or a place, and it doesn't have to be real. It could be something from your imagination. It could be that day on planet Zanussi. Other washing machines are available. It might be that one time the pussycat did something really funny, or the time the dog did something really funny, or that one sunset. The time the child wrapped its fingers around your finger for the first time, or called you by your name, mummy or granny, for the first time, whatever it might be. Just think of that one thing that just lights you up from the inside. And if it's the one thing that stands off the page, it should already be an 8 or 9. What I want you to do is increase it to a 10. And we do that by imagining we're there and we can hear all the sounds, see all the sights, smell all the scents, and feel all the feelings, and feel all the textures. So, for example, if you're on the beach, you hopefully can feel the sand beneath your toes, the wind in your hair, smell the sea air, hear children laughing on the beach, maybe the sound of an ice cream machine, the waves, the cry of seagulls. and feel the emotion. Maybe there's somebody with you and you can feel their hand in yours. Maybe feel the water around your ankles and feel the emotion, that pure joy, happiness, contentment, whatever it is. And by turning up the colors and turning up the sounds and placing yourself in that picture right now, you should be able to get that emotion to a 10. And if you have, I want you to hold on to one of your knuckles, give it a really good squeeze. Squeeze that knuckle. And what you're doing is anchoring that emotion to that knuckle. So as soon as you've got that emotion to a 10, squeeze the knuckle. And if you're ready, release the knuckle and take 3 deep cleansing breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Wriggle your fingers, wriggle your toes, shrug your shoulders, open your eyes and come back into the room. The reason we squeeze the knuckle, you've just anchored all that lovely, lovely, lovely emotion onto your knuckle. And the reason we do it with your knuckle, you could do it anywhere in your body. But if you're driving, you can still then hold on to the knuckle whilst you're driving without putting you in any danger. It also means when you're standing talking to somebody, you can hold on to your knuckle and it doesn't look like, if you were doing, I don't know why I tap there, but never tap there. If you're doing EFT tapping while you're talking to somebody, they can visually see there's a problem. Whereas if you're just holding on to your knuckle, they're not to know that actually you're having to tap into the good emotions that you store inside your body. And what you can also do, we've anchored one, but whereas I have each of those things, I can anchor each of those individually, one at a time, onto the same knuckle or onto various knuckles. And what we call that is stacking. So we're stacking these anchors. And the reason we do that, so that my 2 dogs now, they're still on there and they still bring me loads and loads of joy. But they've both passed over. And at the time of their passing, they were no longer an anchor for me because it was so difficult and it was so upsetting. And I know they were only going over to wait for me, but it was still, I missed them in the here and now. And so this is why then all my other anchors came into play much stronger than my pets did at that stage. Now that has passed for me now, and I can still go back to this one being a real wiggly bum, and this one being the most underfoot doggy ever in the history of underfoot doggies, which just makes you, and the of their nails. But at the time they weren't. So this is why we like to stack anchors onto our knuckles so that when one fails us, the others can come into play. I would also say don't judge yourself for what made it on and more importantly, what didn't make it on. So don't judge yourself for what made it on and what didn't make it on, because sometimes the people that we love the most are also our greatest place of angst, and therefore they might not make it onto the sheet. So please don't judge yourself for that. That's okay. It's your joy, contentment, and happiness sheet. So hopefully you know how to do that now. Just sit and allow yourself to really fill up with all those good emotions and anchor them onto that knuckle. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. And hope that you can see that. Good job. So on a normal day-to-day basis, everything should happen within these 2 lines, which we call our resilience zone. So this, do you see this black line here and this black line here? Everything in between that is your resilience zone. And everything should happen. There should be us waking up in the morning. I don't know, for some being very happy that they've got their breakfast or very happy that they've got out of the house and got to work, whatever, drop the children off. Or maybe this is you getting up and having your breakfast and coffee on your own, and then you're having to go to work. If your work isn't very satisfying for you. And then that might be you getting home from work And again, then as you start to get dozy, and that's maybe you going to bed or going out to dance class or something. So happiness, joy, contentment, surprise, grief, sadness should all happen within this resilience zone. Does anybody's day look like that? Well, everywhere I've taught, there's very few. The only people that would say, yes, my day looks like that are usually nearly always senior citizens who've got to the point where they're like, I just don't care anymore. So yeah, my day's like that because I don't want to let anybody annoy me. For most of us, our day looks more like this. So something happens, and if for a start, if you notice the size of your resilience zone here, this resilience zone is much, much shallower. And we get bumped up out of our resilience zone and bumped down out of our resilience zone, sometimes multiple times a day. Hopefully not as much as this for anybody, but this is by way of an example. Being bumped up out of your resilience zone or bumped down out of your resilience zone in itself is not a problem. Because if you imagine, say, a child was running out into the road, you want to react, you want to be able to put your foot in the brake and stop the car. Or if the fire alarm goes off, you want to be able to get up and get out of the building. So that in itself is not a problem. The problem arises when we get stuck up out of our resilience zone or stuck down out of our resilience zone. So when we get stuck up out of our resilience zone, we can become edgy, irritable, experience mania, anxiety, panic attack, have angry outbursts, pain, and illness, which we call dis-ease. And we do it like that with a hyphen, dis-ease, because any dis-ease in your body is just your body not being at ease with itself. And unfortunately, it's usually been long term that has then ended up causing whatever the condition might be. When we get stuck down in the low zone, when we get bumped down out of our resilience zone, we can experience sadness, depression, isolation, exhaustion, fatigue, numbness, and again, disease. Sometimes the same sort of disease as we would experience when we're up, and sometimes different. And this comes from the Trauma Resource Institute, this model of our resilience zone. There is a third one, and the resilience zone here would be much, much deeper, and the line would be less. It just would be like a wee thread rather than like a heartbeat. So this person who has all the emotions within the resilience zone has an amygdala the size of an almond. And the word amygdala, that's all it means, is almond, because it should be almond size and almond shape. This person has the amygdala the size of a walnut, which when you think of the brain structure, that's really quite big. And the third person whose resilience zone would be much broader and the line would be much shallower would have the amygdala the size of a pea. And you're kind of going, what is this amygdala thing? So I'm going to stop sharing and come back to you. So the amygdala, if you think of, we have two hemispheres. So forgive me if any of you are brain surgeons or neurosurgeons or anatomy and physiology experts. I'm going to just talk about 5 parts of the brain because that's really all I need for this. And I know for some people they'll be going a bit twitchy at this point, but just for the purposes of this, I only really need 5 or 6 parts of the brain. So you have 2 hemispheres. I immediately get rid of one and we just talk about it as if there's one brain. And if you look at the brain in this way, this is your prefrontal cortex, which is behind the eyes. And it's all about risk assessing and being able to think about other people, being able to think, if I put the dishwasher on now, when my mum, granny, whatever gets home, she'll be delighted that the dishes are done for her. Or if I put the kettle on and make mommy a cup of tea, she's gonna love me. That sort of thinking for other people. I don't mean thinking for other people like, oh, Hazel, I'm thinking for you, and I think right now you should go and do it. I don't mean that kind of, but thinking about being able to think that it would be nice to do something for somebody and the consequences would be lovely, rather than And the problem for us is that for our teenage children, this doesn't go in until they're 25. So when we say to them, could you not have a thought for me and lift your clothes off the floor or put the dishwasher on or make a cup of tea? No, they genuinely can't because this part of the brain hasn't matured. And what they've recently discovered is that for people with neurodivergence, it can actually be 35, if at all, that it matures and grows in. Then there's this part of the thinking brain, which is this part of the thinking brain, which is the language and reasoning section of that ability to have a conversation and think about what you're saying and to solve a problem by reasoning is in this part of the brain. This is your spinal column coming up the back of your neck into the basal part of your brain. And the basal part of your brain is your breathing, your heartbeat, your liver function, your kidneys, all the stuff you don't have to think about, as well as your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And in here is the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. And on this, which would be, if you look at it, is a hippocampus, which kind of looks like a seahorse. On the very end of it is the amygdala. And the amygdala's job is a bit like a fire alarm. It's scanning for danger all the time. So anything that you have registered as danger in the past, it has then put it into the hippocampus to put it into the long-term memory banks. But if it has been dangerous, it's put like a little red flag on it so that it can say, oh, I remember this situation. This is dangerous. So I will move away from it. It doesn't always work like that. Because sometimes it's a case of, oh, I recognize this is familiar. And because it's familiar, we kind of go for it. And that's how we end up in this loop of making bad decisions or making eating the wrong foods or in really toxic type relationships with friends or partners because our body or this little amygdala finds this familiar. And it's trying to flag it up to you that it's dangerous, but we don't recognize it. We just recognize it as familiar. And so we keep doing it. So what happens is your little amygdala is scanning for danger and it say you got bit by a dog. And as you're walking down the street, you see the dog and you kind of go, and you either cross over or you take a wider path or but your body can also go into, do you see that immediately I went and my shoulders came up? And I'm only telling you about it. And I'm not frightened of dogs. I have a dog barking out the back at the minute. I hope you can't hear. It doesn't, but because I'm trying to portray the story of somebody getting frightened, my body immediately goes into it. So we can actually put ourselves into fight or flight quite easily without meaning to. So you're walking along and you see the dog and you kind of go and everything. And as you start shallow and rapid breathing, your heart rate goes up, your pupils dilate, you're hearing, so you're only listening now for the dog, and you can't hear the person walking beside you going, oh, I know that dog, that's Benji, he's fine. You can't even hear it. Can't hear that. So saying to somebody who's having that sort of anxious moment, you're fine, don't worry, they can't hear you. So don't waste your breath. Your digestive system, your lovely big thinking brain goes offline. So have you ever heard of somebody flipping their lid? Well, that's where that expression comes from, because this goes offline and this takes over, and now your amygdala is driving your bus. So when your big thinking brain is in charge, you respond in situations. So I'd be walking along, go, it's Benji's a lovely wee dog. Whereas your thinking brain has gone offline, your amygdala, and you're like, panic, you're ready to run, fight, freeze. Now there are others. There is fawn and faint. Faint is slightly different biological reactions as is fawn. Fawn, the thinking brain very much stays online because you are negotiating for your safety. And faint is if you've seen the cat catches the mouse and the mouse goes, and the cat goes, well, that was boring. I don't get to play with that. And the cat looks around or walks off, and the mouse gets up and runs away. So again, that needs your thinking brain to be online. So it's slightly different biological reaction, but very, very similar. So the ones we're concerned are fight, flight, and freeze. So as well as your thinking brain going offline, your digestive system goes offline from mouth to exit. So that can be like you go on stage and your lip is stuck to your teeth, your mouth is dry, your throat closes over. You can no longer swallow. There isn't even any spit to be able to swallow. Your tummy you'll feel like it drops, or you've got stones, or you've got butterflies. Very much depends on you. You know your own reactions. And for some people, you'll not experience all of these. You'll experience some. And for some, it'll be you really experience this one, but you don't experience that one quite so much. You might start to sweat, underarms, tops of lips, backs of necks, hands. You suddenly get very, very sticky. You don't want to shake anybody's hand because your hand's sweating because you're about to go on stage and give a speech or whatever is your thing that makes this happen to you. You will go to the toilet. So if you go for an interview, this is my experience. As I say, different people experience different things. You go for an interview and you go to the little girl's room, and you go to the little girl's room, and you go again, and you go again, and you go again, and you think, I couldn't possibly have any more to go with. I haven't drunk that much before I got here, but you do. And if it's a real severe reaction, Dame Judi Dench would say she vomits before she goes on stage. Your body will evacuate everything. And the reason is that you do not need to, the other thing that goes offline is your reproductive system. Because you do not need to be thinking, digesting, or reproducing when you're in survival mode. And that's what fight, flight, and freeze is. It's you're going into, as is fawn and faint, you're going into survival mode. And the problem that we have is that our little amygdala has never, ever, ever had an upgrade. So the basal part of the brain was created and designed when we crawled out of the soup. And we were reptiles, and it is known as the reptilian part of the brain. Your limbic system is the mammalian part of the brain, and it was the next part. And so it's millions of years old, and it has never had an upgrade. So it doesn't understand our modern way and our modern world. It doesn't understand that the music we listen to, the TV we watch, the conversations we have, the stuff we scroll on social media, our alarms going on our phone, or our smoke alarms going when we cook bacon on a Sunday morning. Your amygdala doesn't understand any of that stuff. And it genuinely thinks that and if you think about this, if you like a sport, I love rugby and tennis, you think of whatever sport you like, or horror movies or roller coasters. So when I'm watching the rugby or I'm watching tennis, I am nearly on the edge of my seat. And I'm going with them, and I'm ducking, and I'm getting, and then and it can even happen. It's really silly. I know it's really silly. I can't do horror movies at all. I couldn't even do horror movies before I knew all this about my nervous system, but now I know all this about my nervous system. I definitely can't do horror movies. But I would watch NCIS. And I would still be all, oh no, oh don't go into that room. Switch on the lights. Please, nobody got electric in these moments. And my husband would kill himself and again I'm on the edge of mistake. And it's only when they're all safe that I kinda go, how did I get this far forward? And I shuffle back and I take it and I kinda go, oh gosh, the team got out and they're all safe. It's great. That is your amygdala making you react to something on the TV because it doesn't know the difference between something real and something imagined. And you react the same to music, to stuff you're scrolling on. So that's why I'm saying we can put ourselves into a state of fight or flight very, very easily without even thinking about it. One of the other ways it can be done is our trousers being too tight. Would you believe I have had people, or even your skirts, anything that restricts movement around your tummy can put you into fight or flight. Because what happens is your little amygdala sends a message down your polyvagus nerve to your solar plexus. Your solar plexus sits just below your diaphragm, and your diaphragm is a lovely big muscle that sits kind of like this. And when we breathe in, it goes down into a smiley face, and when we breathe out, it goes up into an unsmiley face. So when we breathe in, that goes down and our tummies should go out. But if we're wearing something that's tight around the waist or around the lower tummy, there's nowhere for the organs to go. So the tummy can't go out. So the diaphragm can't go down. And we can put ourselves into fight or flight because our diaphragm can't move. And although sometimes our breath is the hardest thing for us to catch when we're in fight or flight, it is the quickest way to bring us out. Because if we can take 3 deep breaths and we move that diaphragm, we're moving down past the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is just like a junction box, a ganglion of all nerve endings. And as we move the diaphragm down past it, it sends a message back up to the amygdala to say, we're safe. And the amygdala go, are you sure? And I'll say, yes. Because the lions and the tigers and the bears, oh my, sorry, Wizard of Oz, are sneaky and they can come back. So you think that the lion has walked away and then it can circle back. So whereas you will go into fight or flight instantaneously, it will take at least 3 breaths. And that's saying 3, that's if you've only just gone up and you haven't gone too far. If you're into a full-blown panic attack, then it's going to take more than 3 breaths to bring you back down. So when the reason that the digestive system, this whole central column has gone offline is so that it can send extra blood and glucose to the big muscles, your big arm muscles and your big leg muscles, so that you can fight, flight, or freeze. So when the danger has passed, all this glucose that's in our big muscles, all the blood went from the central column, went out to these big muscles to help us fight, flee, freeze. When the danger has passed, the blood will go back to the central column. So your digestive system will come back online. So you might get your tummy might be gurgly or your might get windy. And it very much depends on whether you're like me, where you eat when you're nervous or you don't eat when you're nervous. So it might be that your tummy howls to tell you haven't eaten in whatever length of time because you've been so stressed. Or it's kind of going, oh my goodness, look at the mountain of food I've got to digest. Because most times, so the likes of me watching NCIS on the TV, I haven't used the glucose that has been produced in the muscles. So I might start to shake. I might start to tremble. And people sometimes think that, oh my goodness, I'm falling apart. Where actually what you're doing is releasing. So the gurgling and the noise from your tummy and the shaking can be releasing. But the other thing we do is we yawn, we sigh, or we giggle. And the reason we do that is those are the 3 quickest ways to get oxygen back into the system. And what normally happens is you would maybe take those lovely 3 deep breaths. If you haven't gone too far out of or up out of or down below out of, and the 3 breaths is all it takes. And then you'll go. So again, if you think of that child running out, put the brakes on and everything, and it's grand, and then you go, and you maybe go, oh my goodness, that really frightened me, and have a wee shake. And then you'll start yawning. Because this part of the brain will come back online. So the amygdala has now calmed down. This has come back online and it's gone, oh, I really like that oxygen. Can I have some more of that? And the system goes, absolutely you can. And the quickest way is to sigh, to yawn, or to giggle. And the awful, horrible thing is usually the giggling happens at the most inappropriate moment, like in the middle of a funeral. Because you've had to do that whole, I don't know about you, but normally I'm thinking the last funeral I was at that was for a colleague that wasn't family. You don't know the family if it's a colleague, and you're having to go up and shake their hands and go, sorry for your loss, something appropriate, which feels totally inadequate and inept and all sorts of things. And because it's a colleague, you're usually there with colleagues. So you all get into, for us, the back row. And because you're just so glad that that bit's over, somebody says something and you all fall apart. And it's because you've got past that and you've started breathing again and your brain has come back online. It's gone the quickest way to giggle. Why it doesn't sigh or yawn at that point, I don't know. But it doesn't. It usually makes you giggle, or at least it does me. And again, people think that sigh means, oh, I'm falling apart or I'm communicating. And in that instance, it's not. There are people who do communicate with sighs, the whole exasperated you again, that's a completely different thing from I'm starting to relax, I'm starting to breathe properly. And you can tell if you listen, you can tell the difference. And the beautiful thing is now for you is that now you know this simple bit of stress awareness, the biological reactions that people will take when they get into a stressful situation. You can actually determine whether somebody is using their thinking brain or whether the amygdala is driving the bus. And if you know the amygdala is driving the bus, you might want to be able to help them out a wee bit. And you do that by you staying calm, and you do it by lengthening your breath, particularly your out breath. Your heart rate goes up as you breathe in and it goes down as you breathe out. So if you can stay lovely and regulated, they will come down to meet you. It can be difficult because when we get into situations, we can get swept up with the emotion in the room. But once you know all these people are having biological reactions to whatever it is, it can be really, really funny. So for me, one of the days, I know that sounds awful, but depending on the situation, it can be really funny. So for me, the funniest one was going into a coffee drive-through thing. So it's the drive-through, but it's really, really busy, but they have a sit-in bit as well. And I went into the sit-in bit and I was ordering my coffee, and somebody in the drive-through said something about croissants, and somebody said we're out of croissants now. This was like 8:30 in the morning, and you'd have thought somebody had said the dog had died. The way they all got on, I just stood there absolutely almost wetting myself laughing because I thought, oh, somebody's amygdala has just taken over and it's taken over the whole team. And the girl who was serving me was kind of looking at me going, and I went, and I just laughed, and she laughed with me because she realized that their reaction was completely over the top and and it was just somebody's amygdala had got, because for them, having to say to the customer at 8:30 in the morning that there was no croissants left was somehow absolutely devastating and tragic. Or maybe they knew that customer knew what they were going to say when they said they were out of croissants. So for me, I think it's a lovely tool I don't think it's a lovely tool. I think it's a, a very, very useful tool. And I've had clients ask me, why can't we not just get our amygdalas removed? Because it's absolutely vital. It is vital to keep you safe. The problem is with our society and the way we do things now, it's overstimulated all day long, every day. If you think back to even a couple of 100 years ago, you wouldn't have heard news the way you do now. I mean, you can hear news again on your social medias, uh, every hour on the radio, every hour on TV. You can actually put on channels, different channels, and it's playing news 24/7. You'd have been lucky if a strolling minstrel told you news from the next village over once a month or once a year. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, 100 years ago, you'd have heard it in the newspaper or whatever, once a week. Letters from family from Canada came maybe once a year. We didn't have the way of communicating that we do now. We are overloaded and overstimulated. And it's up to us to take control of all that stimulation and take control of our biology. And we'll do that in our next couple of sessions with meditation, with breathing, with gratitude, with EFT tapping, and particularly looking at our sleep to help us stay in this beautiful, regulated, calm, and centered way. So two other tiny, tiny wee tools that we look at. If you have a coin, and it doesn't matter what coin. I normally use a 2 pence piece, but this isn't. This is actually an Australian 10 pence piece. Don't know why that's on my desk. The Queen of England's on one side, and on the other side is a 10. And I'm not quite sure what the image is at all. But for me, I use the sterling coins because the Queen of England was the head of the Church of England. And so she represents faith for me on this coin. And on the back, if you use the 2p coins, you can find usually, depending again, sometimes you find lions and all sorts of things, but usually there's feathers, the Prince of Wales feathers. And for me, that's FEA, feathers. And the last letter is R, is the fear. So you're looking at the coin and you're thinking faith or fear. So it just needs to be two-sided something that has a different front and a different back. And what I get people to do is sometimes they then sellotape it into their phones. For some that have the clear covers, they might put it in the back of the phone. Put it somewhere you can see regularly. Some of my ladies leave it on their windowsill in the window in the kitchen or the bathroom so that when they're doing dishes or whatever, they see it often. And they ask themselves, when you see it, you ask yourself, am I living in fear or am I living in faith? Maya Angelou said, let me get the absolute words for you. Hope and fear cannot dwell in the same place at the same time. Invite one to stay. I obviously changed that slightly to say faith and fear cannot dwell in the same place. Invite one to stay. Bob Proctor would say, fear and faith both demand you believe in something you cannot see. You choose. So it's that thing of fearing maybe going to see your doctor, going to see the principal in the children's school, going to something that you've never been to before, getting up on stage, and it's the fear of, how's the audience going to react? Are they going to enjoy what I say or not? Am I going to get booed off stage or get rotten tomatoes thrown at me? It's that thing of you cannot predict the future, but we end up having these conversations in our head as if we can, and we end up frightening ourselves. So have the little coin all the time somewhere you can see and ask yourself, am I living in fear or am I living in faith? And if you're living in fear, take the first tool that I taught you and hold on to that knuckle. And the feeling of joy, happiness, or contentment will flood throughout your body and remind you of those good times. And then you can look at the situation you're in that is giving you the fear and go, oh, usually, I know how to sort this out now. And if you don't know how to sort it out, it allows you to be a little bit more clear-headed to think, who can I ask to help me to sort this out? What do I need to do next just to get myself out of this particular situation? Or who can I go and see that can help me? I hope that has made sense. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I will see you in the next video. And what I would say is, what I would do is invite you this week or the space in between. Maybe you're going to go on straight to the next video. But I would invite you for at least the next week to feel your feelings and notice where they land in your body. Thank you very much.